Mr. President, members of the Security Council, I brief you today as intensive talks continue over a potential Gaza ceasefire agreement and release of hostages. It is crucial that this leads to a permanent end to the war and the release of all hostages. It is long past time for the fighting to end, for hostages to return home, for adequate humanitarian aid to enter the Strip, and for recovery and reconstruction to begin in the context of a return to a political path towards a two-state solution. While talks are ongoing, the horrific situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate, with Israeli military operations and hostilities expanding throughout the Strip and the human toll mounting by the hour. This nightmare of historic proportions must end immediately. The intensive Israeli military operation in Deir al-Balah that has resulted in still further Palestinian displacements and direct strikes on 2 UN guest houses has further exacerbated the dire situation and impeded humanitarian operations. At least 1,891 Palestinians were killed in Gaza since my last briefing on 30 June, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. Some 294 were reportedly killed while attempting to collect aid, including in the vicinity of militarized aid distribution sites. Israeli forces continue to issue evacuation orders, causing the repeated displacement of the population. Food insecurity and the broader humanitarian situation continue to worsen despite the limited increase in the approval of entry of humanitarian supplies. According to Israeli sources, 50 hostages, including 1 woman, are still being held captive by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups in Gaza, including 28 that are believed to be dead. Since 30 June, 13 IDF soldiers were killed in hostilities in Gaza. Palestinian militants also continue to sporadically and indiscriminately launch rockets towards Israel. The Secretary General has repeatedly condemned the continued holding of hostages by Hamas and other armed groups. Hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. I echo the Secretary General's calls for the repeated displacement of the population in Gaza to cease. Any forced displacement of the population from any part of the occupied Palestinian territory will constitute a breach of international law obligations. International humanitarian law must be respected by all parties at all times, and civilians must be protected. Mr. President, in the midst of these multiple crises, UNRWA continues to face immense operational, political, and financial pressures. UNRWA's operations have been impeded in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. 330 agency staff have been killed in the war in Gaza. I reiterate the Secretary General's message that UNRWA cannot be replaced, and I cannot overstate enough how serious the agency's financial crisis is. Based on current forecasts, there is not enough money to sustain all operations in all fields beyond August 2025. Repeated and increasingly desperate appeals for an urgent ceasefire in Gaza have been made in this Council. Today, the situation inside the Strip, especially for women and children, is more dire than at any time in this crisis. I implore the parties first and foremost to end this war, release all hostages, and allow the Palestinian population in Gaza to receive the humanitarian assistance they so desperately need. I urge all member states, including those in the Council, to take all possible steps to bring about this end.